Hey everyone, it is July 31st and I am almost finished with The Dark Tower, the last of the Dark Tower series. So I thought we could do a little read with me of the last bit of this. I've only got, I think, 115 pages right now. Hopefully I can finish by midnight. It is about 7:30 p.m. So I'm just gonna sit here and read, and I've also got the Olympics on in the background, so I might get a little bit distracted by that, and then also my cats will probably come and ask for pets. Other than that, I'll just probably flash by all of this like Zoom, but thought we could do a little bit of a read with me, and then maybe talk a little bit about it. What I really want to do for this series is a like, I read this so you didn't have to type like video where I've got like a whiteboard or just pictures on my wall and just kind of, tell you all the gist of all 7 books. So maybe we'll see. I mean, let me know if that's something that you'd be interested in. But anyways, I just thought I'd get this going and let you kind of know what I thought once the end actually happens. All right. First, I gotta get something real quick. Yeah, let's going. I got my coffee with me. I know it's late, but I need coffee when I read. So, let's see. I have my remote. Just in case. Gosh, it is hot in here. I turned down the AC, but it is hot. When I got left work today, it was my car read 108 degrees. So that's like too hot to function. All right, so let's get going. Hey guys, it's Johnny Reeds here. I just want to say welcome to my channel. If this is your first time, welcome. So a few minutes ago, moments ago, not minutes, a few moments ago, you just saw me reading on my couch, trying to finish the Dark Tower series before midnight of July 31st. It is currently August 3rd. And so my camera died. I didn't have enough time to wait and charge and finish filming me reading and discussing. So what I decided to do was just to go ahead and finish it, and thought that what I do is just add the vlog part to the beginning of my video. And now what I'd like to do is talk about the Dark Tower, the last Dark Tower series, and then go into the rest of what I read in July and do my end of month wrap up. So first we'll talk about the Dark Tower. I will say I kind of already knew how the book would end. When the movie came out, there was just a lot of spoilers going around, and ended up catching some of that. So I kind of knew exactly how the book would end, but I still wanted to sit down and just go along for the ride and kind of see how that ended. I didn't know exactly how, like, I knew the ending, but I didn't know like how the ending came about. So I will say it was an enjoying read for the most part. It was kind of slow. So one thing that, after like reflecting on the Dark Tower series, even though it's an epic fantasy, I feel like it's more of like a character study than it is kind of your standard action pack. There's action in it, but most of these books are really examining the characters and the relationships between one another than actually focusing on the fight scenes and the action, because the book series is about the journey to getting to the Dark Tower. It's not about what happens when you get there. So that's kind of, after a few days of thinking about it, I had to realize like, oh, like this story isn't about the Dark Tower. It's about the journey that these characters take with one another to get there. So if you are not someone who likes to read about characters and you're there for the action, this isn't for you. But, you know, I really do like reading about characters. I do like reading about the relationships, and to put them in, you know, this sort of story and world where they're going back and forth between our world, Keystone, Earth, and then All World, which has like end, mid, and end world. So, you know, I really enjoyed reading this series. I feel very accomplished reading this series. It's 7 books, and of course some of them are short, but quite a bit of them are chunky. And I never really thought that I would complete this series in my life. I had read the first one when I was in high school for a school book report. And I didn't really even like finish it because I hated reading as a kid. Some people who I grew up with would probably tell you differently because they always saw me with books. I never finished any of those books. I'd read 200 pages and then set it down and never pick it back up again. I was not a reader until a few years ago. Anyways, I really enjoyed this book, especially if you like Westerns, epic fantasy. You know, this is definitely a really good series. There are some dark moments in it, but I wouldn't say, because Stephen King is very prolific on horror, this is not a very horrific series. Like there's some horror elements, but it's not scary because it's not the purpose of the book. It's about a retelling of a poem by Charles Browning called Child Roland to the Dark Tower Came. And child is basically just another word for night. I found that out in the series, so I thought that was really cool. But Stephen King also includes the, I think, 36 stanza poem in the back of the Dark Tower. So like that was really neat, because I had actually tried to find the poem online because I really wanted to read it. And there aren't a lot of, you know, books that actually have this published in it that are currently being sold or printed. So I really enjoyed the fact that Stephen King included the base work, or, you know, the inspirational piece for creating the Dark Tower series. So I really enjoyed that. I finished just in time for month's end. And so I I gave this book 4 stars. I haven't written a review on Goodreads yet. I'm still trying to digest it. There's a lot. Like I said, it's character work. Yeah, so I finished that. That was actually the last book that I finished for the month. And I'm just going to go ahead and put it back on my shelf right here. I have like a whole Stephen King. All right, anyways, so we'll go to like the first book that I actually finished. And I'll put a picture of it right here is Mother-Daughter Murder Night. I thought it was a pretty decent murder mystery. It's the only murder mystery that I finished for the month of July. And kind of, I will say the one thing that I thought was really confusing is like the plot doesn't match kind of because this is kind of a book where I didn't really necessarily read the summary. I was like, oh, Mother-Daughter Murder Night. And I looked at the cover and the title. I was like, okay, this is probably something where like a mother and daughter are, you know, like they're bonding over something happening next door. And that's not the case. What happens is like this mom and daughter are estranged from one another. And there's a grandchild, and she gets caught up and becomes a suspect in a murder. The mother in the mother-daughter, she's trying to find out who actually committed the murder because her granddaughter is, you know, being framed and is a suspect. And so she, you know, goes on and butts head with her daughter because her daughter just wants to leave it to the police, but the police aren't doing anything. And then eventually over time, the mom and daughter who are estranged to one another actually bond over trying to get the youngest generation exonerated in the book. And at some point that happens, and then I still haven't figured out who the murderer is, obviously until the end, but the granddaughter is no longer considered a suspect by that point. So, but it just wasn't exactly when I thought of like Mother-Daughter Murder Night. Like I said, I thought it was like mother-daughter sitting cozily trying to figure out what's going on at the next door. It's like, oh wait, is a husband or wife murdering their spouse? Like, you know, kind of what I would have thought that would have alluded to. So, yeah, but that is not how it went. But I still enjoyed the story. I still enjoyed the murder mystery in the that was actually told in the novel. So I gave it about 4 stars. So yeah, I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was pretty enjoyable, especially like as an audiobook. I think the narrator did a really good job. So I definitely like recommend, I'll definitely recommend that to all of my mystery, like murder mystery thriller readers out there. The next book that I finished, and I did a review on it, is The Way of Kings. Obviously, I gave this 5 stars, probably the best book that I've written. I won't go too much into it since I did a review, but I will repeat, like, this is not a novel. This is a piece of art. This is so good. It's 1,000 pages, but I didn't feel like it was 1,000 pages. Like I could have just continued going on reading this story. I absolutely loved it. I was enthralled. I loved the prose. I absolutely loved the character work and just the slow pacing of it. It really made me feel like I was there in a part of this story. And I just think that Brandon Sanderson does such a beautiful job with this series. So this goes on the top shelf, and I'm not going to stand up and put it up there. So I'm just putting it back over here. The next book that I finished was, and I'll put it up here because there's another audiobook, is She Who Became the Sun, which is basically all right. So this book is basically a modern, well, I won't say modern. It's just a reimagining of the rise to power of the Hongwu Emperor in the 14th century China. I really typically enjoy Asian-inspired fantasy literature, and I didn't necessarily like this one. I thought there were a lot of similarities to Mulan with the kind of, I guess, gender swap of the main character, where our female must disguise herself as a male in order to basically either survive or and then later on in order to fight in the army. I didn't necessarily enjoy this book, not necessarily for that reason, just because I just didn't think a lot of the things flowed well in it, and the narration of the audiobook was not necessarily all that great. I think another thing was is that I started reading this book in May, and then I had rented it on Libby, and it I didn't get to finish it before it went back, and so I had to put another hold on it and waited and had to wait 2 more months before I can finish it. So I think that 2 month gap probably did me a little dirty because I didn't remember a lot of the stuff from the beginning of it. So that probably was a factor in it. I didn't necessarily hate this book. I just don't think it was, for me. I gave this 3 stars. The next book that I finished was The Golden Enclaves. I also did that on audiobook through Libby. So that was the last book of the Scholomance trilogy, and I'll say I gave it 4 stars, but I think we're going to knock it down to 3 because I kind of was disappointed by this ending. I feel like Naomi Novik played it safe here. I think that there are probably a lot of things that she could have done to expand. And I'm going to spoil this for you. And the 3rd book does not take place in this school anymore. It takes place outside. So you have a lot of other plans and cultures of these wizards that are going on. And I think that when Naomi tried to expand on this, the first person narrative really hurt it, because I think that there should have been more points of view going on. Because there's this war that is outside of the perspective of our main character, and I just don't think it, like, for what it was leading up to. I thought it was a very anticlimactic ending for the trilogy, and so actually, I'm going to knock this down to 3 stars. I was very disappointed by how this trilogy ended. All right. So the next book that I read was also on Libby through audiobook, and that was The Girl with All the Gifts. So I read this book because I'm part of Murphy Napier's Discord and Patreon, and she kind of has like this book club or buddy read, and you can suggest it. And this is actually the book that I put forward, and it got chosen. And I was really excited that it got chosen and to listen to it. The reason why I chose this, the reason why I put this book forward was because I thought it was a really good, sci-fi novel. And I think Murphy at that point was very, very into the fungi, zombie type literature. There's a lot of stuff that she's been reading right now. And so I had actually seen the movie recently. I was like, this is based off a book. I really want to read it. So it would have been really fun to read it with other people. And I put it forward, and luckily it got chosen. So I was really grateful for that, and to be able to read it alongside people as well and be able to discuss it. So I really enjoyed that. With this book, The Girl with All the Gifts, basically you start out in first person with this, I think it's first person. Yeah. I should remember. I just finished it not that long ago. So basically, you're told from the perspective of this girl named Melanie, or number 1. If she's being called by the adults, it's number 1. And but she named herself Melanie, and she basically is being experimented on. But while she's being experimented on, she's also taught. So you have and it really starts off really dark because of the fact that before she's even allowed out of the room, she has to sit in a wheelchair and strap herself down. And then these military figures come in and strap the rest of her down and put a muzzle on her face. And it can be really dark, but you have, this light at the end of the tunnel through character, Miss Justina, who really loves this girl, sees her like her own daughter and protects her, especially as, this is kind of a dystopian post-apocalyptic scenario. And, this girl is not being treated like a child or a human. I feel like there's a sense, there's like this loss of humanity, or the loss of perspective of humanity towards these children, because she's not the only one that is like at this military base. There are several, and something happens, and basically they have to leave the facility, and Melanie's the only surviving child. And the scientist wants to keep her alive so that she can finish her experiments, but Miss Justineau is wanting to keep her alive because she sees her as an actual human being. But the thing is that what caused this post-apocalyptic scenario as to why she's being treated on, there was this infection that killed a lot of the planets, that killed a lot of the people on Earth. And there were a few babies that were born from infected people, and they somehow have this infection that kind of, I guess, to give her the gifts, basically. And she's basically kind of the next evolutionary state of humanity, and being in what it is to being human. I thought it was a really good book. I enjoyed the story, and there's a prequel. I forgot what the name of it was, but I think I'm going to read that at some point because I really did enjoy this book, and I gave it 4 stars. So for anyone who likes like sci-fi, futuristic, dystopian novels, like this is definitely a really good one. So the next book that I read was Stormfront by Jim Butcher. This is the first book of the Dresden Files. I thought this was a pretty decent read. It's very easy to read. I think I put this as a suggestion in my last video. So this was a pretty decent book. It was a very fast read. I probably could have read this in one day if I started early in the morning, and I would have finished by dinner time. So I really thought this was, this is a fast read. So for anyone who's just kind of wanting a quick, short read, this is definitely a book for you. It's also like a mystery thriller novel that is also a fantasy novel because it's got wizards and vampires and all that kind of stuff in it. So I definitely would recommend this to friends who might not necessarily like the fantasy genre, because I think that they would like this because it takes place more in our world. So I thought it was a pretty good book, and I definitely would recommend that to some of my friends. So let's see. The next book that I'm going to talk about is The Shadow of What Was Lost. I did a review on this, and I also put this in my last video. I thought this was a pretty good book. It was a pretty easy read, and I thought James Islington did a really good job of world building and putting pieces together. I think, like I said, I think that because I had read The Way of Kings, and Brandon Sanderson is just so detailed about what's going on in his books. And then I went straight into this, that the end, there's a lot of choppiness. There's a lot of, I guess, kind of scene cuts. And it didn't go into what I think The Way of Kings would have actually shown you. And so for me, it was like two different types of writing styles that I wasn't necessarily prepared for. But I still really enjoyed it. It's a really good series. I'm actually going to continue this series with Johan doing a buddy read with it with a few other people that are on his Patreon. So if you don't know who Johan is, he's Library of a Viking. Go and follow him. He's an amazing booktuber and has some amazing content. So go and follow him. And but I thought this was a really good book and definitely recommend it. And I can't wait to continue on in the series. And then I think the last book that I'm going to talk about is, and I finished this the same day that I finished the Dark Tower series, was Children of Virtue and Vengeance. And I'll put the picture right here. So that is the second book in the Children of Blood and Bone series. And this is by Tomi Adeyemi. This continues on the series. It's a Nigerian fantasy, and I really, really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the audiobook. The narrator is absolutely amazing. I think that there's a lot of action. There's a lot of turmoil, internal turmoil in this book, and there are some things that really drove me crazy. So I will say the main character Zaylee started to become my least favorite character, because her best friend Amari, who is the princess, gets these powers, and she's being persecuted by the other magi, and Zaylee doesn't defend her, and it just becomes really irritating because Zaylee, kind of like in Evan Winter's main character Tal in The Rage of Dragons, there is no rationality because they have so much rage and vengeance inside of them, and Zaylee starts to really project a lot of this on people who have been helping her, and she doesn't defend them. And I'm like, you're acting like absolute crap. And you need to like get your priorities straight. Like, you've got to stop thinking about yourself and start actually thinking about the rest of everybody else in Orisha. I don't know. Like, I was on Amari's side in the book. And, I think that a lot of actions that were from Zaylee ended up actually were very detrimental to the war. And a lot of the blame actually went to Amari, and I was like, absolutely not. This is Zaylee's fault. And Zaylee needs to admit to it, and she needs to apologize to Amari. No. I was absolutely infuriated with Zaylee and how she continued to act and treat Amari, and how she just would not try to negotiate with Anon. She just made things worse with her pride, basically. And it kind of just shows you that like pride will be the death of you. So, she needed to let some things go and really work on herself, and she didn't do it. So I know that might be, some people might find that way off base. That's just how I felt when reading it. But I still enjoyed the book overall. Sometimes when you read a book, like, you still love a character, but like are just infuriated with the way that they're acting. It's like, come on, that's not the right way to act. And I like it because I'm hoping that I can see this character grow and turn around. So there is one more book, which is called Children of Anguish and Anarchy. And so I'm really excited about reading that. There's a huge twist at the end of this book. And so the next book is going out in a completely different direction than really what these first two books, their plot was leading up to. So I'm really excited to see where Anguish and Anarchy go to. And I really do love Tomi Adeyemi's writing and her storytelling. I hope that she continues to write and will continue to suggest her pieces of work. So I'm really, really excited about that. I gave it 4 stars and definitely recommend this novel to anyone who wants to read it. It is young adult. So, for people who, I will say, like, for young adult, it's still pretty action packed for young adult. I think as an adult, you'd still enjoy it. So I think that I just hope that you don't write it off just because it's young adult. Because I think the storytelling is pretty on par with some other adult fantasy novels. And so the next thing I kind of wanted to go into, now that I've talked about the books that I've read, which, by the way, I read 9 books for July, which I thought was a pretty good for me. So I love that I was able to complete 9 books for the month of July. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that in August. I'm just going to try and at least hit 5 or more. That's just my goal. If I can achieve 9 books again this month, that'll be great. But I'm not trying to stress myself out. So, but I will talk about some of the books that I plan on reading for this month. So I do have some of them here. So I do plan, and I already started it, is Royal Assassin. This is the sequel to Assassin's Apprentice, the second book in the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb. I gave the first book 5 stars. So I'm hoping that this lives up to that. And I'm really excited to be reading this book. The next book that I think I'm going to read is Elantris. It's just been sitting on my shelf staring at me, and I was going to read Warbreaker, but I don't know. It's just kind of like, no, like I've got to read this. Like my heart is telling me this is the next book. And then the other book, the other at least hard, like the next printed copy book I'm going to read is Shadow of Self, which is the second book in the like Mistborn, Wane and Wax and Wane series, which is basically just the second book of Era 2 of Mistborn. So I'm really, really excited about that. I know that's kind of 2 Brandon Sanderson books this month. So I know that that might change. These are not necessarily 100% solid. Obviously, like I'm currently reading Royal Assassin, so I'll finish that this month. Oh, and then another book that I have to finish is an Echo of Things to Come, because we're on Johan's Patreon. We're continuing to do a buddy read for the series, so we will continue this. So this month is an Echo of Things to Come, and so I will be reading that this month. And then there's probably a few audiobooks that I've got, some thrillers that I like, because I like to do thrillers on audiobook. I think that's just one of the best way to the best format to read a mystery thriller. And then also for Viking Book Club, I keep talking about other book clubs, but for this book club that I'm in, we're also going to be reading The Captain. I'm going to be reading that on Kindle. Wow, that's a lot of books. I think I have myself overloaded this month. We'll see what happens and what I get through. But those are just kind of some tentative plans of what I'm going to be reading for the month of August. And then for September, I really, really want to do, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to, because we're going to be doing the 3rd book of the Lycanius trilogy in September. And then for September, I kind of really, besides that book, I really want to do standalones only, or at least at some point have a month where I'm just reading standalones, and maybe even some of the smaller ones that I've got on my shelf, just to kind of work through them, because there's a lot of stuff on my shelves that I haven't read yet. And then, but that's kind of one of my plans. Another thing that I wanted to talk about in the future that I'm going to do is I'm going to do a series on the Dark Tower. I don't know if you guys know who Carrie Can Read is, or Carrie Cakes. Her vlog channel is Carrie Cakes, and then her booktube channel is Carrie Can Read. And so she did a video on the A Court of Thorns and Roses books. She did a video series on that, and Crescent City, where basically she just told you kind of the plot, read some of it a little bit, and had some like character artwork in the background. And so I think I'm going to do that for the Dark Tower series. Let me know if that's something that you want to see. For me, I keep touching my mic. For me, I think that's just going to be a lot of fun for me to do, and I really want to do that with you guys. And so that might be a few videos that I'm going to do throughout the next few months, along with my reading wrap-ups, some recommendations, and reviews. So if that's something that you'd be interested in, just let me know in the comments. And before I let you go, I just want to say, like this video and subscribe to my channel, and hit the little bell if you want to get notifications to my channel. And I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching and for subscribing to my channel. It really means a lot. I and so excited to continue to do this. And so anyways, you guys, I hope that you guys have a great rest of your week and have a blessed one. This is Johnny Reads, over and out.